Welcome, my wordsmiths, to another episode on Am I Right? We've got an exceptional guest today. I'm very excited to talk to her more. I haven't known her for super long, but I already feel like we could be fast friends. And as the show is about building community, I think there's a lot that we could learn from her. So we've got Janet W. Butler on here today. And
Mhm.
she's going to introduce herself here in a minute. But I just want to remind you that I've got my comfy clothes on. I've got my pen ready to take my notes. I've got my notebook here. So just remember that this is what this is for, and um, if you have any questions and things, we can always connect you with her community at the end. So, without further ado, Janet, do you want to introduce yourself and give us a little background in what you do?
Yeah, my name is Janet W. Butler. The W is for my maiden name, which is Wanagus, which is almost impossible for most people to figure out how to spell, but it's very simple. Anyway, but I do that part. I did that partially because there are several Janet Butlers out there in publishing. And one of them is an authority on horse anatomy, and I didn't want people mixing me up with her. And so, things like that. And there's another one that's an artist, and I can't draw my way out of a paper bag. So this kind of separates me from these other people, so that you kind of know what Janet W. Butler you're going for. I won a Golden Heart in 1998 for a traditional romance after being in RWA for 10 years and entering the contest for 10 years. I've been known as the Queen of Persistence. Uh, so first book, I picked it. I sold my first novel 3 weeks before 9/11. So the good news
Wow.
was I had finally become a published author. The bad news was publishing completely did. So I have a running joke that maybe I should get out of the publishing business, because every time I get in the publishing business, something terrible happens to people. That happened then when I finally got an agent in 2019. Shortly thereafter, we went into lockdown from the pandemic.
Oh my
Obviously,
goodness.
the pandemic is my fault too. I mean, I just get this business. Anyway, I've been writing for a long, 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 long time. I've been in this business for over 40 years. I'm older than I look. So, when you get to be 100 years old, you learn a few things. But no, but that's kind of who I am. I write primarily clean romance, sweet romance, and romantic suspense. My first book that I sold actually was an inspirational, which was kind of a lark for me. I took a normal clean romance and just made it into an inspirational, won second place in a contest. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll submit this. So I'm not an inspirational author. I hope my books inspire, but that's kind of where I am.
And those two are not exclusive.
No.
Inspiring and being an inspirational author are not, yeah, that doesn't come hand in hand always. So that's amazing. Well, thank you for that intro. I think you can already tell that Janet knows what she's talking about. She's been through it. This is
And if
very
I don't,
different
I'll
from our
reply to
last
tell
episode.
you. Yeah.
Yes, yes. We our last episode we had a guest who writes children's horror. So now we're on to sweet romance, and I think this is a perfect example of how though we're all writers, we all do very different and unique things. So I'm excited to talk about what you have to offer. And one of the things I wanted to hit on first is that she is an editorial consultant. And for those of us who don't know all that entails, I've asked Janet to give a description on what it means to be an editorial consultant.
What you basically do as an editorial consultant is kind of anything. Uh, let's put it this way. I've done pretty much everything on a book, from first substantive edit to when it goes on the shelf. I had a full-time job at a publisher in which that was my job description as a book project manager, as I took it from first substantive edit all the way through to when it was printed and on the shelf. Now, the only things I don't do as an editorial consultant is I don't do interior book design. I don't do cover design. The art thing, no way. Uh, but I do your nuts and bolts. I do all your grammar and your punctuation and your spelling and your word usage. And I'm really annoying about that because I'm a really good speller, and and I'm a really good punctuator, and I'm a great fan of the Oxford comma. And then we do things like, the narrative flow. We do things like, is your motivation falling down here? Are your characters staying consistent? What's your conflict coming from? I'm famous for sending manuscripts back with, in the margin, the word why over and over again, because if a character does something I don't understand, I'm going to say, why are they doing this way? This comes out of nowhere. Don't do that to me, So I check all the little picayune details, and I also check the big arcs. I also do the big thing. We also kind of, I do the proofreading. I do whatever a client needs. We try to structure a plan for their book. I ended up with one client I was doing a poetry book, and she originally wanted just somebody to, I think, write intro and a couple of pieces in it. By the time I got done working with her, we had completely restructured the book. I had categorized the poems for her. I had edited all the poems. I ended up writing an introduction for her because she liked the way I did things. I wrote her back cover copy. And she was just so happy because we meshed and we worked really well together. She was doing a book of poetry that her mother had written. How cool is that?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's an easy product to be passionate about.
Yeah. And so we just met on that one. So it's things like that. I do first-time authors. I do people who have several books under their belt and they need creative brainstorming. I've brainstormed plots with people, pretty much anything.
Wow. Jack of all trades. And it's, as an editor, usually there's a specialized area from developmental to technical, but it sounds like you have covered it all. You've done all the things.
One of the reasons I liked the job that I had at the publisher was that it allowed us to do everything. We had jobs that normally two, three, or more people would do. We did the copy editing. We did the line editing. I sent things out to proofreaders and got the proofs back. Things like I just managed the whole thing. And that was so fun because then you really knew that the work would be consistent. You didn't have to turn it over to somebody else who would undo all the stuff you did right.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you for explaining that. I think that gives us a much clearer understanding of just how much in depth you've been more than dabbling in the writing community. So, with that, I'm sure you've helped others get ready for publication, and I'm sure, and I know for a fact that you've helped teach writing, including your book. And I wondered if you could maybe give that a little bit of an introduction. Tell us about besides the editing side, the teaching side. Do you have one-on-ones? Do you talk to groups of people? How does that go?
Oh, I love to talk to groups of people about writing. As you can tell, the problem is not getting me to talk, it's getting me to shut up. So I love to talk. And what happened was, what got me started actually teaching writing was years ago when AOL had its writers group. It used to, I don't know if people can remember that because that was a long time ago. It was probably 20 years ago now. Oh boy. They had these chat rooms, and you could do workshops in them. And I had some good friends who were doing just ordinary chat type things. And I was an AOL mentor, an AOL writers group mentor at that point. And I was getting a lot of emails that asked the same questions over and over again. And I said, you know what? I should just do a workshop and answer these things. And that way I'm not writing 400 emails trying to answer the same things. So I proposed a workshop to the writers group, and they liked the idea. It was called Ask the Mentor, and it was every Wednesday night at 7:00. We were on for an hour, and I would usually have a topic, and I would give kind of a talk about it or whatever, or we talk about it in general just in the group, and I give the benefit of whatever I had learned about it to the people, and we hit it off. We had a group that showed up every week. We had such fun together. We even partied. We had holiday parties. We had people bringing virtual champagne. We had just a blast. I did that for 6 years.
Wow.
A different topic every week, and talking about contests, talking about how to pitch your work to agents, talking about how to write a query letter, talking about synopses, the whole shot. So my book came out of that. And because what happened was we got to summertime in one of these years, and I said, people always drop off during the summer. People are not at the computer. How can we keep attendance up? So I decided I would start Ms. Mentor's summer school. And we went for 12 weeks in the summer. And I said, if you follow this plot that I'm going to give you, at the end of the summer, you should be able to submit a proposal if you're writing already. So take your work in progress, bring it in every week, and we're going to knock something apart in it, and, not individual critiques, but just give you tips on how to tailor it. And I had not only did we not lose attendance, we gained attendance during the summer. I had eight people at the end of that submitted things. 8.
Oh gosh.
That's terrific.
That's incredible.
Yeah. and I had acknowledgments in people's self-pub, acknowledgments pages saying thank you for this writing course, blah blah blah. So that's why I came out with the book, because people said, oh, this should be in a book, this should be in a book. So of course I put it in the book, and of course nobody buys it. I don't know. So that's how I got teaching writing, quote unquote, per se. And I've done workshops at like RWA conferences and things like that, done little individual workshops. I love doing that stuff. It's so fun.
I wish I could have attended. Sounds like a great time.
We had a ball, and it was because not that you can tell this from talking to me, but I believe in having fun with this craft. If you're not having fun writing, get out of it. There
are so many other easy careers to pick if you're not having a good time writing.
I'm a musician and I'm a writer. I picked the 2 easiest things to make a living in, right? Yeah.
I graduated in creative writing and art, so I can understand that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to do anything with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's amazing. So, because you've been a coach and an editor and a mentor and your own author, the question that I always ask on this show is there a quality or a trait or maybe even just a weekly action in the writers that you see that are more successful, whether they're published or not, versus others?
That's a tough question.
It's a big question. Yes.
Yeah, that's a tough question, because you can talk the platitudes, and you can say, well, write every day, and you can say, well, have discipline. You can have it. I think the people that are successful in this, and success means different things to different people too. I think the people that are successful, and by that I kind of mean, do you finish your projects? Are you proud of them when you're done? Are you not necessarily, are you selling like hotcakes? Because right now almost nobody is selling like hotcakes. Publishing has to get back on its feet again. So you don't go by sales numbers. You go by, number one, is it true to what you're to who you are? Are you writing something that's true to what you are? And are you happy with it? Are you proud of it? Are you growing? Are you going places with your writing that maybe you never went before? The people that I see that keep succeeding are always challenging themselves. They're always stepping off that cliff. And that's what I've decided to do in the last several years. I scare myself half to death on every book, because I always get to a point where I think, I could do that, but can I do that? I don't know. Well, I'll try, and you go in there and you start writing, and first of all, you just say, I'm going to write anything that's going to get me there and see what happens. And I think that's the other thing. You have to be willing to write anything sometimes, just that gets you from point A to point B. You can be really surprised at how good that writing is. I've always been surprised at how good that writing is, because it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just going to write something that's going to get me to this plot point. I need to do the side trip on that. I am a plotter and not a pantser. I have a structure whereby I write a book. It is one vivid scene. It is a first chapter. It is a synopsis, and then it's the rest of the book. That's the plan. I've come upon that after years and years of trying to be a pantser and having my characters run off with a book and never be seen again. Or secondary characters taking over the story, or things like that. I can't do pantsing. I get to a certain point where if I don't know where I'm going next, I stall, I freeze, I stop. So when I look at my synopsis, I go, well, if I'm stuck or feeling stuck, I say, well, I just have to get to that next plot point. So I'll write something that gets me there. But I think it's just that I wouldn't necessarily even say write every day. Be disciplined about it, and know that you don't have to wait for inspiration, and know that sometimes inspiration comes when you start the fingers going, and know that it doesn't have to be perfect. There's all kinds of things that get in our way. Just try to keep those things out of the way as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of touched on my other question, which was on, coachability and self-discipline, and I think that is a really big factor of it, but there's also all those fears around you that they can be paralyzing, it feels like, especially for those of us who haven't published yet. If you don't already have one under your belt, I think that can feel like such a feat. So appreciate that advice. I think it's definitely worth its weight to listen to what you have to say there. So um I don't know that anyone listening, they may already know this, but Janet has a series of blog posts, and they are on the topic of the editor is your friend, no, really. And I would love to talk more about what that entails and your motivation for writing those.
Oh, part of my motivation for writing those is running into so much work that needs so much editing, and the people are clueless when they send it to me. I've had people send me work that they claim has been edited 3 times, and I've sent them back notes saying, get your money back, because this person did not edit your work. It's horrible, okay? And I'm saying that charitably. This is horrible, but we can fix it. And that's the other thing. I am not real tactful. I think I was born without the tact gene, but I try not to be brutal. I don't believe in being brutal. I don't believe that has any place in any art. And having come through brutal stuff in music school, I understand it doubly so. And you in art don't understand it doubly so. But I wrote that because no matter who you are, you need a good editor. Stephen King needs a good editor. Mary Higgins Clark certainly needed a good editor on some of her books. Some of them were horrible. It was obvious that her editors didn't touch it. Okay, fine. She was a big name. Big deal. But to me, you need an editor. You just need that extra pair of eyes, if nothing else, because you will not catch things. I guarantee you. We all have had the experience of saying, "Oh, this is perfect," and you go back 6 weeks later, and it's certainly not perfect. You're catching all kinds of stuff. So I did it because of that, and I also did it because there's a lot of confusion over what an editor is supposed to be for you and do for you. So I wrote one series of posts that basically said, this is why you need an editor. Yes, you need one, yet we all need them. This is why. Then I wrote the second set of posts about this is what you don't want your editor to do. This is signs that you should run away from this editor. And among them were things like, them being brutal to you, them wanting to remake your work into something that it's not, them wanting you to sound like somebody else. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen. And then the third set of posts was, this is what a good editor will do for you. This is how you will feel when this good editor is working with you. This is how your work will look. So it was broken into 3 sets of posts because that's a lot of information to impart.
Yeah.
And when I would teach writing, I will often teach from the point of view of, let's start out by defining what this is not. So we did that with synopsis, we did that with conflict, and I do it with editing. Let's start out by defining what editing is not supposed to be. It's not supposed to do these things to you. And then let's say what it is supposed to do and what you should be feeling like at the end. And we also talk about being judicious about who you're paying to do your editing, checking if they have references, checking, that's hard to do sometimes, checking if something as basic as their website. If you go to a website and it has typos on it from a person who's supposed to be an editor, do not walk away from that. It's not going to help you. If they can't care enough to go onto their website and check the typos, what are they going to do to your work? Good question. So that's what that series was about.
Wow. And she does have another series. We'll touch on it. I would love to have a full episode solely for the next topic, but I will try to keep it at a wrap up because I find this really interesting. So, knowing the importance of the editor, I think you can see how this is a follow-up. But she likes to talk about how gatekeepers are a good idea. And right now, especially, I think where the publishing market is kind of all over the place and people are unsure, and self-publishing is becoming even a bigger thing. Let's talk about gatekeepers. Let's talk about your opinion on how their role as in our lives as writers.
I got in big trouble with that blog post, which was the interesting part about getting in trouble with it was I actually got picked on by people who had seen a comment I had put on somebody else's blog, commenting on something else, and it was a related topic, but not even that one, and they didn't like what I said, so they came on and blasted me on this blog post. Well, what I basically said was I liked things better when we had gatekeepers, when we had somebody to say, this is publishable, this is not. And people just got incensed at this. Well, you elitist, you just want the same things out there all the time. I said, no, I just want books that I don't have to cringe when I'm trying to read. And there's a whole lot of cringe-worthy stuff out there. There is stuff that is just horribly, badly written. We all know it. We don't say it out loud. We're all supposed to be supportive of each other. I'm very supportive of you. Learn to write. Okay? I'm sorry. I used the analogy of the blog post of, somebody, a young, little kid playing the violin. And we all love those little kids with their tiny little violins out there, and they're playing their little hearts out, but they're not ready to go to Carnegie Hall. And if you're trying to imply that this child should make that leap, you're doing a disservice to that child and to the art. And the same thing is happening with a lot of published books, self-published especially, sometimes with small presses. Sometimes they don't have the staff to do the good job they need to do on editing. It's just a fact of life. Some of these enterprises are one person. There's only so much you can do. But then find somebody who can help you get your book publishable, at least as close to publishable as you can get it. The reason for that being, of course, we don't want to wade through dreck. We want to support really good authors, and they can come from indie, they can come from small press, they can come from big press. I don't care as long as it's a good book, as long as it's a good story, as long as it's not rife with errors. But the interesting side to that was that one of the people that was most vocal about criticizing me was a self-published author who I had read her first book, and she made a major mistake in it three-quarters of the way through and didn't catch. She had the wrong characters being murdered, which was kind of important. And I went back on her webpage, and her subsequent books were being crucified by the comment section because they were so badly edited. Well, she didn't have anybody edit them. She did it herself. We can't see our own work,
No. And I think it depends on what your definition of publishable is, right? That's why people attack. I think they're looking at the end goal, the glory and the fame of finishing it off and having something to show the world. But I think it's more about the journey. Writing is more about the journey. And I know I've learned so much more than when I even graduated college about the qualities in writing that are good, and there's only so much you can learn unless you're just spending time doing it and reading and writing and cutting. And I mean, I know it's grueling, but I would have to say I think I agree with Janet on this one. I think I do.
And people they do the same blanket condemnation of agents and of all these publishing guidelines and all this stuff. It's just to keep people out. No, it's not, because I've seen what happens when people are not kept out before they're ready. Just get yourself as ready as you possibly can. I'm not saying that if you publish your book yourself, it's going to be lousy. I'm not saying that. I've read self-published books that are marvelous.
Oh, same. Absolutely.
I edited one that I always brag about now because it was such a good book. And when it's good when you're editing and you forget that you're editing. You're just reading. And this was this book that I had done. And I said, that guy's self-published and it's marvelous. And they're out there everywhere. But the key was, he was coachable. He and I have a running joke about how he was making plurals with apostrophes, and I was having a stroke every time he was doing that. And I was like, Troy, cut it out. I've told you not to do this. He was like, okay.
Oh, wow.
So he combs through every manuscript he sends me from now on, saying, there's no plurals with apostrophes in, are there? Because I'll catch them.
That's funny. That's such good advice. That is I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's not so much the gatekeeper, it's just preparedness. It's just a matter of how prepared are you, and you can't always know what you don't know, so sometimes you got to try, but I think that because of that pressure of the time, you have to get published in so much time, you need to get it out there. We kind of sacrifice quality for time sometimes. And I've had to battle that myself and just say, no, you need to take a step back. You need to look at what you can do to improve this before you move forward. So I appreciate you offering your opinion on that, whether you have been in trouble for it in the past or not.
Interesting that you bring up the time because I had written a couple of other blog posts that were entitled "What's the Hurry?"
Mm,
Literally addressing that issue of what's the hound at your heels that's making you do this fast. There's no
yeah.
need to hurry. Take your
And it's
time.
it's there in the hustle culture, but it doesn't need to be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
yeah,
your time.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh wow. Okay, so this has been great. You are a delight. You really are a delight to talk to. I'm so glad that we had you come on the show.
Thank you.
Before we finish, I'd love to ask you to provide your one overarching piece of advice for aspiring authors who are currently working on their work in progress.
Oh boy. Okay, we're going to take 40 years of experience and distill it into one sentence.
Maybe pick one. Pick one of the things. Yes.
I would say that don't stop working on something too soon. Always be willing to go deeper. Always be willing to peel away another layer. Always be willing to see if you can do it even better, even deeper, even more emotionally, even more relatably to people, because you're touching emotion. People buy on emotion. They don't buy on intellect. They buy on emotion. So get out there and be brave and say what you need to say, but don't get lulled into the idea that you need to say certain things a certain way.
Mm.
The square peg in the round hole. I always have been. And so, I'm saying things that sometimes nobody wants to hear in my books. But and please understand, I'm not talking about social commentary or anything else. I'm talking about you being true to your story. If you're not so excited to get to that thing that you can't wait to write it, then maybe you need to step back and not write that right away. Maybe you need to find an element of it that makes you that excited. Right from the fire. Always right from the fire.
Mm. Always right from the fire. That's my plaque for the week. I'm gonna put it on the wall. Somebody in these interviews, there's always that one perfect plaque quote, and that was it.
And that just came to me. I've not formulated that ahead of time. That just came.
Well, it's a big overarching question, but that's why I asked, because there's always such good wisdom that comes out of it. Janet, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we wrap up, can we ask, how do we connect with your community? How do we become a part of what you do?
I sent you a bunch of links to
Mm-hmm.
my website. My website's very simple. It's janetwbutler.com. I am on Twitter. I am on Facebook. My author page on Facebook, I really love people to come to that because I do things each day. I do Musical Monday. I do Writing Tip Tuesday. I do fun things on there that people like to read and connect with. I'm always available for editorial things. If you want to, I can share my email. Whatever you want me to share. It's not like I have a set group of people that I'm, a part of necessarily. I'm all over the place right now. I'm splattering myself as many different places as I can to try to, build the platform we all have to build. Mm-hmm. And also because this is just fun.
It is.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when you said, well, I don't know, I'm all over.
There's a contact page through my website. So if they wanted to go to janetwbutler.com, there is a contact page at the end of that, and they can send me something, and it will go to my email. So if they want to get on a mailing list, if they want to find me on Facebook or whatever, I can help people find me.
She's out there. And you can guarantee I'll be following. So, and we'll include those links for the listeners. We'll include those links down at the bottom so you can take a look at it. But
yeah,
I'm grateful to have you on. Am I right? And I hope that you continue to have a great time in the community, and you're definitely inspiring. I hope you continue to inspire others with your writing or with your coaching and editing. And just thanks for coming on. We
Well, thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much for having me. This was just a
Absolutely.
ball. Yeah.
It has been fun. I'm glad. I'm so glad that we connected. And to all the listeners out there, to all my wordsmiths, right on.